My name's Leslie. Nobody special. As I said before, no YouTube, no TikTok. Just a mom of three. I live in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Just nobody special. I want to start by saying this is totally out of character for me. I don't have a YouTube channel. I don't make TikToks. Mostly I avoid the camera or being videoed, but I think it's very important that people recognize the severity of the virus and how it can impact you even if your family member does not have the virus. And I'm really hoping that by my taking you through the steps and what someone goes through, that those of you who aren't taking it seriously or who feel like it can affect you, that maybe this will give you a different perspective. My mom lives in a small town in Pennsylvania with less than 6,000 people. So you would think that in a small town, old coal mining area, not a lot of population, that would not be an area that would be affected, or you would think that it would be one of the areas that even if the virus was there, that it wouldn't affect them to the degree that it is. A little bit of history. A month ago, my mom, although not a healthy person, she had several things wrong with her, but she was able to have a pretty typical normal life. She was having some issues with her feet turning purple, and they believed that it was a vascular issue, so they did a regular standard test just to see if she had blockage in her heart or her legs, and the test came back to be negative. However, once you have those tests done, oftentimes plaque can break loose and cause a stroke, which did happen to her. She had never had a stroke prior to that. And then I believe 2 days later, she had a second stroke. Now, although she did recover pretty quickly from the strokes and did not have lasting signs from the strokes, it did make her pretty weak, and she was already weak prior to that. So they sent her to a nursing home so that her legs and her feet could get stronger and that she could come home and go back to her baseline of where she was before that. And then the virus. She's been in the nursing home for the past 3 weeks. We've not been able to go in and see her. The nursing home that she's in has no phone service. And so we got a phone in her room. However, since she's been in there, she's started shaking a lot. Her health started to decline, which was very difficult for us because we couldn't be in there to see day to day what was going on. And although, the staff does the best that they can do, it's pretty standard that, nursing homes are shorthanded to begin with. And now with this and people not having childcare for their kids, and they're just no visitations, making it where families are calling in, so they have to return a lot more phone calls. Things can take a lot longer to detect or to take care of right now. So, although my mom did have a phone in her room, oftentimes she wouldn't answer it, so we would get to talk to her maybe 5 minutes every couple days. Her hands would shake, she'd drop the phone, or she would fall asleep in the middle of the conversation. So I would drive there, which is about an hour from me, and I was able to look through a window and talk to her a little bit. It was never very long because she just was not in a good place. She just, whether it was the medication, whether, it was just the depression of being there without her family. She couldn't understand why that was the case and why we couldn't come in. And, she believed it was just the home doing it. She actually had our birthday while she was in there over those 3 weeks. My dad and I had to be outside the window. Little side note, if you're wondering why I'm in my garage doing this, it is because Obviously, my family is home, and as you can tell by the way that I look, and as evidenced by the 15 times that I've cried already, that I am trying not to be in front of my kids in this state. It is their gram that they can't see or say goodbye to. So I'm trying to be strong around them, despite the fact that my eyes have big red bags from crying and not sleeping. But that's why I'm in my garage doing this. So I will fast forward a little bit. A few days ago, we got a call that my mom was not doing well. Her breathing wasn't good, and she was in and out of responsiveness. So they wanted to take her to the hospital. Of course, we said yes. My dad got there pretty quickly. He lives fairly close to that hospital. And like I said before, I'm about an hour away from them. So I drove there, got to the hospital, the emergency room, and they wouldn't allow me to go in because they had a rule of one family member per guest, or patient, one guest. While I was there was a dad whose daughter and her fiance had just been in a car accident, and only the mom could go in, and the dad was standing outside. They didn't allow us to switch on and off. Once you were in, you weren't permitted to leave. And once the patient was taken to a room or another part of the hospital outside of the emergency room, you were not allowed to go with them or see them. I sat outside for a good while, and then finally the doctor did give me permission to go in since my mom was not doing well and my dad was not handling it very well alone in there. So I was able to go in, fortunately. They did test her for the virus, which can take anywhere from 3 to 10 days to get the results back. She's in a special part of their ICU unit until the results come back. We've not been allowed in, and typically, and for those of you who have had family members in this position in ICU or not doing very well, typically the family's right there with them. They have family meetings to discuss the wishes of the family, and you get an opportunity to say goodbye if it comes to that. And at minimum, you get to be there the whole time. And typically, I'm sure for most of you watching this who have been through this, you know that someone from your family, if not all of your family members, were not far away, whether it be in a waiting room. You were certainly there with your loved one, their last critical days, which these could be my mom's. But because of the virus, we can't go in. My dad can't say goodbye. I can't say goodbye. My kids can't see their gram. I'm not even sure they understand what's going on or think it's real. My stepfather called the funeral home today. Again, small town, so we call the funeral director by his first name. He called Bob today. And of course, we can't have a viewing or a standard funeral. And at this point, we don't even know the protocol of when we can get the body if it comes back positive, which is highly likely, being that she was so susceptible, being in a nursing home. I think the most difficult part is not being there, not being around loved ones, not being able to be in there with my mom. The thought of her spending her last days by herself, alone and afraid, after already having been in a nursing home for 3 weeks and afraid and alone and confused as to why we couldn't come in. And I think the thought, if anyone stops for a minute to think about your loved one dying alone, the thought is almost crippling. It's not okay. It's not okay for anyone to be in that position. So when you think that it can't affect your loved one, or that your family can't feel an impact of the virus outside of actually getting the virus itself, you're so wrong. And the impacts and the trickle down things that they have to put in place because of the virus are impacting people more than you would know at this point. Something as simple as, say my daughter falls and hits her head just walking down the steps and has to go to the emergency room. God forbid something bad happen. And she ends up in ICU or worse. She's by herself. They're not permitting people to be in there. And I know at a few hospitals they are permitting one loved one if it's a life-threatening situation, but not in the hospital my mom's in. However, Imagine if it were your child and only you could go in, but her dad or her mom couldn't go in, or a sister or a brother couldn't go in, or grandparents couldn't go in. It's just heart-wrenching, the thought of it all. So this video, and there may be more, although not the way that I would want to make a big video looking like this or in this condition or any of that. I think it's important to know that it is a serious thing and it should be taken very seriously, and thinking that it can't impact you outside of getting the virus itself, you're so mistaken, because it can. If your loved one passes right now, you can't have a funeral. You can't have closure. You can't be there in the hospital. You can't, none of the things that you typically could do. I'm asking all of you to take it seriously, because the impact of the families, every number you see in that death count, are people who died alone, and family members who have that gut-wrenching feeling that they should have been there and couldn't. So please, I ask that you take it seriously. Thank you.